we could be looking at a government shutdown here. So, Tom, is that why you have extra time that the government's going to shut down? You have no one to go bug on the Hill?
Well, when the government shuts down, that's how it is. I was talking to some people yesterday morning and just said, this is just going to happen. It's got bad stuff in it. Though this Elon Musk tweet is interesting, I wonder if that'll change things. And lo and behold, I was just shocked that what was a real
Elon blew it up.
bill fell. It was beautiful.
Many people are dismayed, actually, to see that billionaires are having an influence on Congress. It's been a real outrage.
They got outraged in the last 10 minutes, not with George Soros and all the other billionaires.
Josh, no. But billionaires' influence are now a main concern for Democrats these days, strangely. Yeah. So I think because people have been at different points of this process, let's go back to the beginning, as you were saying, Tom. Just a basic summary on what goes on this time of year in order to fund the government.
Well, what goes on this time of year is supposed to happen back in April to like June, where they pass appropriation bills to fund the budget or to fund the country, the government. And always they fail. So then they do some sort of continuing resolution until February or until like August or September. And then they always say, okay, let's do it right before Christmas.
Well, just real quick to butt up, it's like the normal year for the government ends on September 30th. That's when the government,
right.
When they fund the government, the fiscal year is until September 30th. And so your point is these guys on the Hill are supposed to be passing, fighting, negotiating all these funding bills. There's like 13 or whatever during the course of the spring and the summer, in order to pass all these budgets by September 30, but they never get to it.
Right. And they always push it to right before Christmas when what's called the fumes caucus, because the airplane fumes, all the members who want to leave right before Christmas. And normally they get away with passing the garbage that we saw from that first bill. And you talk about billionaires influencing, here are billionaires influenced in a good way. I've learned like the people who wrote that bill were like K Street healthcare lobbyists, like Pharma, which is a multi-billion-dollar organization, into the trans stuff and everything else. They wrote most of the bill, the healthcare stuff. So it was a clear victory yesterday.
So again, it went from a 1,500-page bill that got dropped on people's desks. They wanted to vote on it within, I think, 48 hours. And what happened to it was Elon Musk tweets out, this is what's going on. There's transparency now. We see that this should just be we want a clean continuing resolution, which meant just keep funding at the levels it is now and don't tack on additional, I think it was like $100 billion. They said, of course, some of it was aid to make people feel bad if they don't pass it. But then, of course, there's tons of write-ins for ridiculous requests from people losing power, essentially the Democrats. And so the answer was, no, we're not going to pass this bill. We're going to go for a clean one. That was step number one, correct?
Right. And that's what Mike Johnson had promised, just a clean CR.
I got to help you, our audience, to help people understand things. So House Speaker Mike Johnson then, after Elon blew everything up, he was then open to this idea of doing what's known as a clean CR, which is just a continuing resolution, keep the government funding for a short window of time at the same rate it had done during the previous year, right? And that was the thought was to do that for 2 months or something like that.
And what killed that was what President Trump wanted was the increase of the debt limit, which I was against increasing the debt limit through this means, except if I was advising President Trump, that's exactly what I tell him. Increase the debt limit now so you don't have to deal with it later. But it does take, I think, a negotiating tool when you increase the debt limit. For Doge or reconciliation, it does take it off the table when you can't threaten with a debt limit.
I think part of the problem is that there's a lot of conservative activists across the country who think our government spends way too much money. We need to cut way too much funding, which I do agree, actually, by the way. But they think that Donald Trump also believes in that. And I think the record really doesn't show that. I think Donald Trump is more than happy to run deficits, more than happy to run expensive, spending bills. He voices a little bit, oh, this is terrible, but does he really believe it? Like, would Donald Trump actually shut down the government to cut spending? Because, he and House Speaker Mike Johnson came together and said, yeah, let's do this, raise the debt limit for 2 years. Let's do this kind of relatively clean CR with some, emergency funding and some other things that were not like too crazy, like farm bill, whatever, not horrible, and then just pass it. And I was like, okay, it's not great, but I would have been fine with it. But there's like about 30 Republicans like, no, we're not going to go for it. And now we're at this impasse where there's not 218 votes to keep the government running right now. And we may end up having this thing shut down in the next 24 hours.
So here's a fun picture. Here's the difference between this first bill that they're about to ram through. And for all the people complaining, I'd like to make an additional point. And Tom, you understand this well. They could have passed this first smaller bill that was clean, which was eventually was put forward. But first they tried to add in these 1,500 pages. If you wanted to pass emergency relief, say to North Carolina, you could come together as Congress and do that completely separate from a continuing resolution. You could just bring it forward, say, hey, we need this additional funds. Let's just separate this and we can all vote on it. But they didn't do that. They added it to this larger bill. They added it on top of this, which just could have been brought forth and voted on because they were trying to ram through extra pork in this bill. So you get to this one, and then basically people came forward and said, hey, we're not even going to pass this one. And so that's my question to you. This seems like a clean bill. And as Josh is saying, we're at an impasse now because for some reason, people did not want to pass the second one. Why didn't they pass the clean second one?
For a number of those Republicans, I mean, there are some that I can't. I would go insane if I try to delve into the mind of Nancy Mace. But for somebody like Chip Roy, it's the debt limit is very serious to them. They right now there is no debt limit because Biden working with Congress eliminated the debt limit until early next year.
Well, they just changed the debt limit from a finite amount that it can't exceed to being that there is no debt limit until a certain date, which Trump wanted to continue for another 2 years. Right.
And so where they're stuck at right now is I don't blame Chip Roy for wanting to vote against it. It probably and Johnson should have known that there's a number who take the debt limit seriously. The debt limit negotiations in the past have actually fiscal conservatives have used it to reduce the deficit and reduce spending. The Budget Control Act was passed because of debt limit negotiations. That was I think that might have been under Obama.
That was with Boehner,
so it has
right?
been, yeah. So it has been used positively in the past.
So Tom and Josh, will the government shut down? Yes or no?
I mean, I'll say it first. I mean, I think it will functionally shut down maybe for a few hours, but I think the fumes are still so big. I mean, they could even do a thing where they literally pass a 3-hour budget and as they're waiting for legislation to come together. I think there's going to be an agreement today. Ultimately, there's going to be agreement whether the government shuts down for 1 hour or 5 hours. I think they will have
kind of.
I will say that they will basically have an agreement, and they will keep it all going. So
no or yes.
I don't think it's going to shut down. I mean, if it does, it'll be for just a few hours. Not really it.
All right.
Essentially, no. I don't think it will shut down.
Essentially, no. Tom, what do you got?
I think Josh is right. It'll. I don't know what they'll come up with. They could even do something until the 27th, just come back after Christmas. But if it shuts down, it'll be for a couple of hours when people are sleeping.